The grand concert hall was buzzing with anticipation. Rich velvet curtains hung on the walls, golden chandeliers sparkled above, and the polished wooden floor reflected every glimmer of light. The audience, a sea of well-dressed men and women, murmured quietly, their eyes occasionally glancing at the stage. The maestro, a man with sharp eyes and a confident smile, stood proudly by the piano. He had conducted countless performances and considered himself unmatched in skill and talent. Everyone in the hall respected him, but some also feared his sharp tongue. In the back corner of the hall, a small figure waited nervously. She was the daughter of the maid who worked tirelessly behind the scenes of the theater. She had no formal training from prestigious schools, no wealthy patrons to guide her, and no grand introduction. Yet, she had a gift, one that she had kept hidden, practicing in secret whenever she could steal a moment alone with a piano. Her hands were small but capable, her fingers nimble and sure, and she had learned to feel the music with her heart rather than just her mind. Today, by a twist of fate, she had been invited to perform. The reason was simple yet bold. Someone in the audience had heard her play during a charity event and suggested she try her talent in front of the maestro. Her heart pounded at the thought. She had never faced a crowd this large, let alone the maestro himself. Doubts filled her mind, whispers of fear that she might embarrass herself and confirm the assumptions of those who believed she was unworthy. The maestro, ever observant, noticed her entering the hall. He narrowed his eyes and let out a small, dismissive laugh. His voice, loud and clear, carried across the hall. "Is this the girl? The maid's daughter?" he said with a mocking tone. "How charming. Perhaps she can play a simple tune without breaking the piano." The audience chuckled politely, unsure whether to laugh or feel embarrassed for her. Some had already decided she would fail, while others were curious to see if the rumors of her skill were true. The young girl's cheeks flushed, but she took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. She reminded herself of all the hours she had spent alone, practicing scales, perfecting melodies, and learning to express her emotions through music. She had prepared for this moment in her own quiet way, without applause or recognition, relying only on her determination and love for the piano. The maestro strutted to the piano, his presence commanding the stage. He raised his hands as if conducting the air itself, ensuring that all eyes were on him. "Let us see what the maid's daughter can do," he said with a smirk, his words dripping with condescension. The audience leaned forward, eager to witness either an embarrassing failure or an unexpected surprise. Behind the stage, the girl adjusted her dress, checked her posture, and reminded herself that this was her chance to show the world her talent. She did not want to prove the maestro wrong out of spite. She simply wanted to share the music that lived inside her. Her mother, who had worked in the shadows of the theater for years, had always encouraged her to believe in herself, and today her guidance echoed in her mind. The lights dimmed slightly, focusing a spotlight on the piano. The audience hushed, and the maestro gestured for the girl to come forward. She walked slowly, each step feeling heavier with anticipation, yet lighter with the hope that her music could speak where words could not. The audience watched her with a mix of skepticism and intrigue. Some whispered to each other, wondering how someone so young and untrained could possibly hold their attention. Others were silent, sensing the quiet intensity in the air. As she approached the piano, the maestro leaned closer, his voice low but sharp. "Remember, one wrong note and everyone will know your place," he said with a sneer. The girl's hands trembled slightly, but she refused to show fear. Instead, she focused on the keys in front of her, the familiar feel of ivory beneath her fingers, the comforting knowledge that she had practiced, even if no one else had witnessed it. She seated herself carefully, straightening her back and lifting her hands above the keys. The hall was completely silent now, every eye fixed on her. The maestro's smirk faltered for a brief moment, replaced by a hint of curiosity. Even he could sense that this girl was unlike any performer he had underestimated before. He leaned back slightly, confident that he could still ridicule her, but uncertain whether the first note would validate or challenge his arrogance. Her mind cleared of doubt, and she let the music flow naturally. It started softly, almost hesitantly, but each note was precise and full of emotion. The sound filled the hall, weaving a delicate tapestry of melody that seemed to quiet every whisper, every murmur of doubt. The audience shifted in their seats, surprised at the depth and clarity of the sound that emanated from her small hands. The maestro's eyes widened slightly. He had expected a faltering performance, perhaps a few clumsy notes, but the girl played with confidence, with feeling, with a skill that seemed far beyond her years. The subtle power in her music began to command attention, and the room grew still. Patrons who had been ready to scoff found themselves leaning forward, captivated by the purity of the performance. As the first measure ended, the hall remained silent, the echoes of the notes lingering like a whisper in the air. The girl's heart raced, not from fear, but from the thrill of sharing her music. She had always played for herself, in the privacy of small rooms, but now her gift was recognized, even if only silently. The maestro's smirk was gone, replaced by an expression of astonishment. His usual arrogance gave way to uncertainty, as he realized he had underestimated the young girl completely. Every hand movement, every delicate press of the keys, told a story. The audience was entranced, feeling the emotion she poured into each note. It was as if the music itself had the power to pause time, to make the rich and powerful forget their status, and simply feel. The girl continued, her fingers moving with grace and control, each note resonating with clarity and passion. Some in the audience felt a lump in their throats, others had tears forming in their eyes, unable to believe that such talent could emerge from someone so unassuming. The maid's daughter, in her quiet confidence, continued to play, letting the music carry her forward, ignoring the doubts, ignoring the expectations. She had prepared for this moment all her life, and now it was unfolding before her. The maestro, known for his harsh critiques and cutting words, found himself rooted in place. He had mocked her publicly, certain of her failure, but the first few notes had frozen him. For the first time, he felt a sense of humility, an acknowledgement that talent could appear in the most unexpected places. He realized that skill was not always born from privilege or formal training. Sometimes it came from dedication, passion, and heart. As the piece continued, the audience was completely absorbed. There was no longer mockery, no whispers of doubt, only the pure appreciation of music that transcended status, age, and expectation. The hall seemed to breathe with her, every note a testament to her courage and her talent. When she finally paused, even briefly, the silence was heavy, as if the entire room were holding its breath, unwilling to break the spell. The maestro opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. He had no critique, no witty remark, no mocking tone. He simply watched, stunned, as the maid's daughter proved that true talent cannot be denied. The young girl looked up, meeting the eyes of the audience. She smiled slightly, not with pride, but with the quiet satisfaction of knowing she had shared a piece of her heart. In that moment, the hall recognized not just a performer, but a storyteller, someone who could move people without words, using only the language of music. The first part of her journey had begun. She had faced mockery, doubt, and fear, and she had emerged not only unbroken but shining. The audience would remember this night for years to come, not for the maestro's arrogance, but for the unexpected brilliance of the maid's daughter whose first tone had frozen the entire hall. It was a beginning, a moment that would ripple through the lives of everyone present, a testament to courage, talent, and the quiet power of believing in oneself. After the first note had echoed through the grand hall, a hushed anticipation settled over everyone present. The young girl, the maid's daughter, had taken her place at the piano, and the memory of her presence still lingered like a soft whisper among the audience. The maestro, who had been ready to mock her, now wore a rare expression of uncertainty, his arrogance tempered by surprise. The girl felt the weight of the moment but also a strange sense of calm, as if the music itself was guiding her. Earlier that day, she had barely been able to eat breakfast. Her hands had trembled slightly as she arranged her few belongings, practicing in her mind the simple pieces she had mastered over the years. Her mother had watched her quietly, knowing that this was more than a performance. It was an opportunity for her daughter to step into a world that seemed unreachable to them. The maid's daughter had always been observant, learning not only music but also the rhythms of life around her, noticing small gestures and emotions that often escaped others. It was this sensitivity that made her playing so profound, even at such a young age. She had been invited to perform by someone who had seen her play at a charity recital. The woman, a music teacher with a kind heart, had recognized a rare spark in the girl. She believed that talent should not be hidden, even if it came from humble beginnings. She had approached the maestro with a suggestion, and though he had scoffed initially, curiosity had eventually gotten the better of him. And so, the invitation had been extended, a challenge wrapped in opportunity. Now, standing in front of the grand piano, the girl remembered the countless hours she had spent practicing in the quiet of the early morning and late evening. She had learned to listen, to feel each note, to understand the subtle vibrations that made music come alive. She knew that her fingers could follow the patterns, but it was her heart that guided the emotions behind each sound. The audience did not yet know it, but they were about to witness something rare and beautiful. The maestro, meanwhile, paced slightly behind her, trying to mask his curiosity with a posture of authority. He had underestimated her before, and he was determined not to appear vulnerable in front of the crowd. Yet, every now and then, he would glance at her hands moving across the keys, and he could not deny the skill that emanated from her. There was a confidence in her movements, not born from arrogance, but from an intimate understanding of the instrument and the music. As the girl prepared for her first full performance, she felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She closed her eyes briefly, recalling her mother's words from that morning. "Play from your heart, not for them, but for yourself." Those words anchored her, reminding her that the true purpose of music was expression, not approval. She took a deep breath and began to play, her fingers dancing lightly over the keys, creating melodies that rose and fell like gentle waves. The hall responded in kind. The audience, initially skeptical, leaned forward, their eyes fixed on her hands. The maestro, though trying to maintain composure, found himself leaning closer, unable to turn away from the unfolding performance. The music was soft at first, cautious and deliberate, but gradually it grew richer, more confident. Every note seemed to tell a story, a tale of hope, struggle, and quiet determination. The audience could feel it. They were no longer just watching a performance, they were experiencing a journey. She moved seamlessly from one piece to another, her transitions smooth and natural. There were no mistakes, only a fluidity that seemed almost instinctual. The maestro watched in silence, a part of him still struggling to comprehend how someone so young, so untrained by formal standards, could command such presence. He had spent years honing his craft, yet here was a girl who had learned in secrecy, without guidance, and she was captivating everyone with her talent. The maid's daughter noticed the subtle shifts in the audience. Heads turned, eyes widened, and some faces softened with awe. She played not to impress, but to share, and in that authenticity, she found a strength that made the music even more compelling. Her fingers glided across the piano, each note resonating with clarity and emotion. The hall was alive with sound, yet it was more than music. It was a story of perseverance and passion, one that no one could ignore. As she continued, she remembered the small moments that had shaped her love for the piano. The way she had listened to the distant notes from the theater while helping her mother clean, the joy she felt when she finally mastered a difficult passage, and the quiet pride in her mother's eyes when she played for her alone. These memories infused her playing with life, making it more than a performance. It was a celebration of everything she had overcome. The maestro finally spoke, though softly, almost to himself. "Remarkable," he muttered, a word rarely heard from him. He had expected to ridicule her, to show the audience that talent required training and status. Instead, he was witnessing something raw, genuine, and extraordinary. His voice carried a mix of disbelief and admiration, a combination unfamiliar to him but impossible to ignore. The audience began to respond subtly at first, a quiet murmur of appreciation, then a gentle applause that grew louder as the performance continued. They were moved not by grandeur, but by sincerity and skill. The girl's playing had broken through the barriers of expectation, showing that talent could emerge from the most unexpected places. The energy in the hall shifted from skepticism to wonder, from doubt to admiration. She had practiced many pieces, but now she improvised slightly, letting the music flow naturally, following the emotions that welled up inside her. Each note was deliberate, yet effortless, creating a harmony that touched everyone present. The maestro's initial arrogance had vanished, replaced by the quiet realization that he was witnessing something exceptional. The girl's talent was undeniable, and it commanded respect without a single word. Throughout the performance, she maintained her composure, her focus unbroken. She did not glance at the maestro or the audience, except to briefly acknowledge their presence with a nod. Her connection was with the piano, with the music itself. The audience felt this connection, and it drew them in, making them part of the story she was telling through sound. As the final notes lingered in the air, a profound silence followed. The hall seemed suspended in time, as if the music had frozen the moment, leaving everyone in a state of awe. The maestro's mouth opened, and he tried to speak, but the words faltered. He had no critique, no remark, only admiration. The girl had not only performed, she had conquered doubt, fear, and prejudice, all with the language of music. The young girl rose from the piano, her hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the exhilaration of having shared her gift. She smiled softly, aware of the impact she had made without needing to say a word. The audience erupted into applause, their excitement genuine and heartfelt. The maestro, finally regaining composure, stepped forward and nodded in acknowledgement, a rare gesture of respect. In that moment, the maid's daughter realized that she had crossed an invisible threshold. She had faced ridicule, fear, and the weight of expectation, and she had emerged not just unscathed, but triumphant. The experience was not just a performance. It was a validation of her passion, her perseverance, and the quiet power of believing in oneself. The story of her performance would spread, inspiring others who felt unseen or underestimated. The hall had witnessed more than music. It had witnessed courage, resilience, and the undeniable impact of authenticity. She had proven that talent does not belong solely to those with privilege or formal recognition. It belongs to anyone who nurtures it with love, dedication, and heart. As the hall gradually emptied, the girl walked with her head held high. The maestro watched her leave, reflecting on the lesson he had learned that day. Humility, he realized, was not taught. It was earned. And sometimes it came from the most unexpected places. The maid's daughter had not only performed a piece of music, but she had also reshaped the expectations of everyone present. Her journey had only begun, and the echoes of her talent would resonate far beyond the walls of that grand hall. The next morning, the young girl awoke with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The memory of the previous night's performance still lingered vividly in her mind. The hall, the audience, the maestro's astonished face. All of it replayed as if she were watching a scene in a dream. She knew that today was important, for the attention her talent had drawn could either open doors or create new challenges. Her mother had already begun her daily chores, moving quietly around the house. She offered her daughter a warm smile but said little, knowing that words could not capture the weight of what had just happened. The girl dressed carefully, mindful of the way she presented herself. Though her clothes were simple, her posture and composure carried a quiet confidence. She felt the sense of responsibility that came with her newfound attention. People were beginning to notice her, and she had to represent herself well. Word of her performance had spread quickly. Friends of her mother, patrons of the theater, and even some members of the local music community had begun to speak of the extraordinary young girl who had silenced the hall with just a few notes. Some admired her courage and raw talent, while others remained skeptical, unable to believe that a maid's daughter could truly possess such skill. But the girl was unconcerned by the doubts. Her focus remained on the music, on the connection she felt with the piano, and on the satisfaction that came from expressing herself fully. Later in the day, she received an invitation to return to the hall, this time for a more formal performance. The maestro had requested her presence, wanting to observe her progress and, perhaps, to see if the first performance had been a lucky coincidence. She felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. She remembered the maestro's sharp words and mocking tone, and though she did not fear him now, she respected the challenge of performing under his gaze. She arrived at the hall, which felt familiar now but still imposing. The chandeliers gleamed, the velvet curtains swayed slightly, and the polished wooden floor reflected the afternoon light streaming through the high windows. The audience was smaller this time, consisting mainly of musicians, teachers, and a few patrons who had heard of her talent. Their whispers filled the air, a mixture of curiosity and expectation. The maestro was already at the piano, his expression unreadable. He did not speak to her immediately but watched as she entered, assessing her carefully. The girl bowed slightly, acknowledging his presence without fear. She had learned that humility was not weakness and that confidence did not require arrogance. These lessons, gained from years of quiet observation and self-discipline, had prepared her for moments like this. When she took her seat at the piano, she closed her eyes for a moment and breathed deeply. She thought about all the times she had practiced alone, the quiet evenings when the only sound was her own fingers on the keys, the encouragement from her mother, and the joy she had felt when a piece finally came together. These memories grounded her, giving her the calm focus she needed. She did not think about the audience, the maestro, or the expectations. She thought only of the music. The maestro finally spoke, his voice measured and less mocking than before. "Play for us," he said simply. There was no smirk, no condescension, only a calm expectation. The girl nodded and began to play. The first notes were gentle, precise, and full of feeling. Her fingers moved with control, yet with a natural fluidity that made every note resonate clearly. The music grew, gradually building in complexity and emotion. The audience listened, captivated by the depth of expression emanating from her hands. She played a selection of pieces she had prepared, each one chosen carefully to demonstrate not only her technical skill, but also her ability to convey emotion. There was a quiet elegance in her performance, a sense that every note mattered and that every pause had purpose. The maestro watched closely, his usual critical gaze softened by genuine admiration. He had expected to find flaws, but there were none. What he saw instead was a young musician who had mastered both skill and feeling. During a particularly challenging section, she paused for a brief moment, gathering her strength and focus. The room held its breath. Then, with a renewed energy, she continued, her fingers flying over the keys with confidence and precision. The complexity of the music did not intimidate her. It inspired her. Each note was deliberate, each chord a story, and each phrase a message of dedication and heart. The audience was completely absorbed. Some leaned forward, eyes wide in awe, while others had tears forming in their eyes, moved by the purity of her music. They were no longer merely spectators. They were part of the story she was telling. Even those who had initially doubted her talent found themselves captivated, unable to look away from the piano that seemed to come alive under her hands. The maestro, who had spent years honing his own craft, felt a profound respect for the young girl. He realized that talent was not solely the product of formal education or high status. It could emerge from dedication, passion, and a deep understanding of one's instrument. The maid's daughter had proven that music was a language of the heart, one that transcended social boundaries and expectations. As the performance continued, she allowed herself to improvise slightly, letting the music flow naturally from her emotions. Her improvisation was subtle, yet powerful, adding depth and nuance to the already impressive pieces. The audience sensed the authenticity in her playing, the honesty in each note, and they responded with rapt attention. The hall seemed to breathe with her, every sound resonating with the collective spirit of those present. The maestro spoke again, this time to the audience. "Observe the power of passion and dedication," he said, his voice calm but filled with admiration. "Talent knows no boundaries, and true skill is measured not by wealth or status, but by the heart and effort one invests in their craft." His words were sincere, a rare moment of humility and recognition from a man known for his pride. The girl did not hear him directly, but she felt the acknowledgement in the atmosphere, a silent validation of her journey and her efforts. As she neared the end of her performance, she felt a surge of energy and emotion. The final notes were played with confidence and grace, leaving a lingering resonance in the hall. The audience erupted into applause, louder and more heartfelt than before. The maestro stood, clapping as well, a clear sign of respect for the young musician who had defied expectations. Her heart swelled with pride, not from the recognition, but from the fulfillment of sharing her gift and touching the hearts of others. After the performance, she was approached by several musicians and teachers who offered words of encouragement and admiration. They praised her technique, her emotional depth, and her ability to connect with the audience. She listened politely, grateful for their recognition but remaining humble, knowing that the journey of a musician was ongoing and never truly complete. The maestro approached her last, his expression a mix of pride and wonder. "You have an extraordinary gift," he said quietly. "Continue to nurture it, and you will achieve greatness beyond imagination." His words carried weight, not as a challenge, but as a genuine acknowledgement of her talent. The girl bowed slightly, her eyes bright with gratitude and determination. As she left the hall that day, she felt a sense of purpose and possibility. She had faced doubt and skepticism, and she had emerged stronger and more confident. The experience had taught her the value of perseverance, humility, and the importance of sharing one's talents with the world. She knew that there would be challenges ahead, but she also knew that with dedication and heart, she could overcome them. The maid's daughter returned home, her mind filled with ideas for new pieces, new melodies, and new ways to express herself through music. Her mother welcomed her with a proud smile, sensing the transformation in her daughter. They spoke little of the performance, understanding that the true reward was not in the applause, but in the growth, confidence, and joy that came from pursuing one's passion. In the days that followed, the story of her talent continued to spread. People spoke of the young girl who had captivated a hall, silenced a maestro, and shown that talent knows no boundaries. Yet, she remained grounded, focused on her music, and committed to improving and growing with each passing day. She understood that recognition was fleeting, but the love for her craft and the dedication to her art would sustain her. The events of this day marked a turning point in her life. She had moved from the shadows of her mother's work into the light of her own potential. The music that had always lived quietly within her now had a voice that could be heard, felt, and appreciated. She had taken the first steps in a journey that would test her skill, her courage, and her resilience. But she was ready to embrace it all with determination and heart. The world had begun to take notice, and she was prepared to show them the depth and beauty of her talent. The day of her major performance arrived, and the young girl felt a mixture of anticipation and calm determination. The grand hall looked familiar now, yet it still carried the weight of expectation. Every detail, the gleaming chandeliers, the polished wooden floors, the soft folds of the velvet curtains, seemed more significant today. She had learned from her previous experiences that each performance was a test, not of her skill alone, but of her courage and focus. As she approached the stage, the audience had already gathered, their chatter hushed by the anticipation of the event. The hall was larger than she had imagined, filled with people who had come to see the girl who had captured the attention of the maestro. There were musicians, teachers, patrons, and regular audience members, all curious to witness the performance of someone they had only heard about. The air was thick with expectation, and yet, amidst the nervous energy, she felt a quiet confidence. The maestro was at the piano once more, his expression more reserved than before. He had come to respect the girl's abilities, but his pride still lingered. He watched her carefully as she took her seat, measuring her demeanor, her posture, and the tension in her hands. He had learned that talent could not be judged by appearance or background, but he was curious to see how she would handle this larger, more formal stage. The girl took a deep breath and closed her eyes for a moment. She recalled all her earlier practice sessions, the countless hours spent learning to express herself through music, the quiet moments alone where she had perfected each movement. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory, reminding her to play from the heart, not for recognition. That advice grounded her, giving her the clarity she needed to face the room full of observers and the maestro's watchful eyes. She began to play, her fingers moving over the keys with both precision and grace. The music flowed naturally, carrying with it the depth of her emotions and the intensity of her preparation. The audience was immediately captivated. The hall seemed to hold its breath, as though it had paused to listen to each note, each pause, and each crescendo. The maestro's stern expression softened slightly, his eyes following her every movement with a mix of amazement and respect. Her performance was more than a display of technical skill. It was a story told through melody and rhythm. She conveyed hope, struggle, joy, and determination, all without uttering a single word. The audience could feel the emotions as clearly as if she were speaking directly to them. Every note resonated through the hall, building a connection that went beyond simple entertainment and reached the hearts of those present. She navigated complex passages with ease, her fingers dancing across the keys in a fluid motion that seemed effortless. The challenges of the pieces, which could have intimidated a more experienced performer, only inspired her. Each chord, each scale, and each dynamic shift was executed with confidence, showcasing both her technical mastery and her expressive depth. The music enveloped the audience, drawing them into a world created entirely by her skill and imagination. The maestro, who had been skeptical of her abilities not long ago, now watched with genuine admiration. He had underestimated her talent, assuming that her background would limit her potential. But here she was, performing with a confidence and artistry that rivaled even the most seasoned musicians. He realized that his initial judgment had been shallow, and that true talent could emerge from dedication, passion, and a deep understanding of one's instrument. Throughout the performance, the girl remained focused, yet aware of the audience's reactions. She noticed the slight shifts in posture, the widening of eyes, and the quiet gasps of surprise and admiration. These subtle responses fueled her confidence, reminding her that her music had the power to touch and inspire. She did not play for recognition, but the acknowledgement of her talent was a comforting affirmation of her efforts. As the piece progressed, she began to improvise, allowing the music to flow naturally from her emotions. Each note, each chord, and each phrase was carefully considered yet spontaneous, reflecting the depth of her understanding and her connection to the piano. The hall responded, the audience leaning in, captivated by the authenticity and richness of the performance. The music was alive, and it carried with it a message of hope and determination that resonated deeply with everyone present. The maestro, unable to conceal his awe, whispered to himself, acknowledging the extraordinary skill and emotional power she possessed. He had thought that his experience and authority would dominate the performance, but he had been completely overshadowed by the sheer talent and presence of the maid's daughter. His previous mockery seemed distant and irrelevant, replaced by a sincere respect that he had rarely shown before. The audience's reaction grew stronger as the performance reached its climax. The notes swelled, rising and falling in a beautiful, complex pattern that captivated everyone. Each pause, each dynamic shift, and each flourish was executed with precision and emotional depth. The young girl had transformed from a humble, nervous performer into a commanding presence, able to control the atmosphere of the entire hall with her music alone. As the final notes echoed and faded into silence, the hall remained still for a heartbeat, as if collectively holding its breath. Then, the audience erupted into applause, their excitement genuine and heartfelt. Some stood, clapping and cheering. Others had tears in their eyes, moved by the power and beauty of her performance. The maestro joined in, clapping with an expression of admiration that spoke louder than words ever could. She rose from the piano, a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration on her face. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the intensity of the experience. She had not only performed with technical skill but had conveyed emotion, told a story, and captured the attention of an audience that had come to see someone else entirely. The triumph was not in the applause, though it was sweet, but in the realization that her talent and dedication had made a profound impact. After the performance, several musicians and teachers approached her, offering words of encouragement and praise. They admired her technical skill, her expressive depth, and her ability to connect with the audience. Each compliment was heartfelt and genuine, further reinforcing the recognition of her abilities. She accepted their words with humility, understanding that her journey was only beginning and that each performance would bring new lessons and challenges. The maestro approached her last, his expression softened by respect and amazement. "You have an extraordinary gift," he said quietly, his voice carrying sincerity. "Continue to nurture it, and you will achieve greatness beyond what you can imagine." The girl bowed slightly, a smile of gratitude and quiet confidence on her face. She knew that the true reward was not in accolades or recognition, but in the ability to share her music and touch the hearts of others. As she left the hall, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She had faced doubt, skepticism, and the weight of expectation, and she had emerged stronger and more confident. The performance had validated her dedication and her love for music, reinforcing the belief that passion and perseverance could overcome even the most daunting challenges. Returning home, she was greeted by her mother with a warm, proud smile. They spoke little, knowing that words could not capture the magnitude of the day's events. Instead, they shared a quiet moment of understanding, a bond strengthened by years of support, guidance, and mutual respect. The young girl felt a deep sense of gratitude for her mother's unwavering encouragement, which had given her the courage to face the stage and share her gift with the world. In the days that followed, the story of her performance continued to spread. People spoke of the Maid's daughter who had silenced a maestro and captivated a hall with her music. Her talent was recognized not only for its technical precision, but for the emotional depth and authenticity that accompanied every note. She remained grounded, focused on her craft, and committed to continual growth and improvement. The events of this performance marked a turning point in her life. She had moved from the background into the light of recognition, not because of her social status or wealth, but because of her talent, dedication, and courage. She understood that this was only the beginning of her journey, and that each performance would test her skill, her focus, and her emotional connection to music. Yet, she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, guided by her love for the piano and her desire to share her gift with the world. As she practiced in the quiet hours that followed, she felt a sense of calm determination. Each piece she played was a step forward, a chance to explore new melodies, refine her technique, and deepen her emotional expression. She had learned that true artistry was not only about skill but about authenticity, courage, and the willingness to share one's heart with others. The hall had witnessed the beginning of her story, but the path ahead was hers to shape, note by note, with dedication, passion, and unwavering focus. The anticipation in the hall was almost tangible as the young girl returned to the stage for her next performance. This time, the audience was even larger, filled with people who had heard of her talent and were eager to witness it firsthand. The chandeliers reflected the soft light onto the polished wooden floor, creating a golden glow that seemed to welcome her. She could feel the energy of the room, a mixture of excitement, curiosity, and expectation, but she did not let it overwhelm her. Instead, she focused on the piano, her familiar companion, and allowed her heart to guide her fingers. She sat gracefully at the grand piano, her posture perfect, her hands poised above the keys. The maestro, standing to the side, watched intently. His expression was a mixture of pride, astonishment, and lingering skepticism. He had seen her perform before, and he knew the talent she possessed, but he also wanted to see how she would handle the pressure of a larger audience and a more formal setting. The room was silent, every eye fixed on her, waiting for the first note. Taking a deep breath, she pressed the first key, and a pure, clear tone filled the hall. The sound resonated, echoing softly off the walls, and immediately captured the attention of every listener. She began to play with a controlled intensity, her fingers moving effortlessly across the keys. Each note was deliberate, yet filled with emotion. The audience felt the story in her music, the journey she was telling, and they were drawn in completely. Her performance was a blend of technical mastery and heartfelt expression. She had prepared carefully, but she also allowed herself moments of spontaneity, improvising subtly to let her emotions guide the music. The complexity of the pieces did not intimidate her. Instead, it inspired her to push herself further. The hall seemed to breathe with her, every listener captivated by the depth and beauty of the sound. Even the maestro, who had once mocked her, stood silently, unable to hide the admiration growing within him. As she continued, her music began to weave a tapestry of emotion that moved beyond mere notes and rhythms. It told a story of perseverance, hope, and courage. She thought of the countless hours spent practicing alone, the quiet encouragement of her mother, and the determination that had carried her to this moment. Each note was a testament to her journey, and the audience could sense the sincerity behind every sound. The maestro, who had always commanded attention and respect, felt a humbling shift within himself. He had approached her performances expecting to assert his authority and skill, but he found himself in awe. Her talent was undeniable, and it demanded recognition. The arrogance he had carried into the hall seemed distant and irrelevant as he watched her transform the space with her music. He realized that true artistry was not about status or formal training, but about the connection between the musician, the instrument, and the audience. The audience responded subtly at first, leaning forward in their seats, eyes wide with fascination. Some whispered to each other, trying to comprehend the skill and emotion they were witnessing. Others had tears forming, moved by the purity and power of her music. The hall was completely absorbed in the performance, caught in the spell she had cast with her talent. Every chord, every pause, every dynamic shift was felt deeply, creating an experience that transcended words. As she reached the most challenging section of the piece, her fingers moved with precision and confidence. The notes flowed seamlessly, even in the most intricate passages, and her improvisations added a richness that elevated the performance to a level beyond expectation. The audience was captivated, completely engaged in the journey she was presenting. The music carried a sense of inevitability, as if each note had been destined to reach this moment of beauty and expression. The maestro, unable to contain his admiration, whispered quietly to himself, acknowledging the extraordinary skill and emotional depth of her performance. He had doubted her once, assuming that her humble background and lack of formal training would limit her abilities. But now he understood that true talent cannot be measured by appearances or credentials. It is born from dedication, passion, and an intimate understanding of one's craft. Throughout the performance, the young girl maintained a calm focus, aware of the audience's reactions but not dependent on them. She played for the music itself, allowing it to carry her through each phrase and passage. The emotional connection she established with the hall was palpable, and the listeners responded in kind. They were no longer passive spectators but active participants in the experience, their emotions intertwined with the music she created. The climax of the performance approached, and she felt a surge of energy and emotion. Her hands moved with deliberate intensity, each note carefully crafted yet full of feeling. The audience could sense the culmination of her effort, the mastery of her skill, and the depth of her emotional expression. The hall seemed to vibrate with the resonance of the music, a shared experience that left everyone breathless. The final notes echoed softly, leaving a lingering resonance in the hall. For a brief moment, there was complete silence, as if the world had paused to acknowledge the beauty of what had just been created. Then, the audience erupted into applause, their excitement and admiration genuine and heartfelt. Some stood, clapping and cheering. Others had tears in their eyes, moved by the power and emotion of her performance. The maestro joined in, clapping with a rare and sincere expression of respect. The young girl rose from the piano, a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration on her face. She had not only performed with technical skill but had conveyed emotion and told a story that resonated deeply with everyone present. The triumph was not in the applause alone, but in the knowledge that she had shared a piece of her heart and touched the lives of those who had listened. After the performance, musicians, teachers, and patrons approached her with words of admiration. They praised her technique, her emotional depth, and her ability to connect with the audience. Each compliment was sincere, reinforcing the recognition of her talent and dedication. She accepted their praise with humility, understanding that her journey as a musician was ongoing and that each performance would offer new challenges and lessons. The maestro approached her last, his expression softened by respect and wonder. "You have an extraordinary gift," he said quietly. "Nurture it, and you will achieve greatness beyond imagination." The girl bowed slightly, her eyes reflecting gratitude and quiet confidence. She knew that the true reward was not in recognition, but in the ability to share her music and inspire others. Leaving the hall that evening, she felt a sense of fulfillment and purpose. She had faced doubt, skepticism, and the pressure of expectation, and she had emerged stronger and more confident. The performance had validated her dedication, her love for music, and her belief in the power of perseverance and courage. At home, her mother greeted her with a proud smile. They shared a quiet moment of understanding, knowing that words could not capture the significance of the day. The young girl felt gratitude for her mother's support, which had given her the courage to perform with authenticity and passion. In the following days, her story spread further, reaching people beyond the immediate audience. She was celebrated not just for her technical skill, but for the emotional depth and authenticity she brought to her music. Despite the recognition, she remained grounded, focused on her craft, and committed to growth and improvement. The events of this performance marked a defining moment in her life. She had transitioned from the shadows of her humble beginnings into a place of recognition and respect, not because of status or privilege, but because of her talent, dedication, and courage. She understood that this was only the beginning of her journey, and that each performance would continue to test her abilities, resilience, and emotional expression. Yet she was prepared, guided by her love for the piano and her desire to share her gift with the world. Practicing in the quiet hours that followed, she felt a renewed sense of determination. Each piece she played was an opportunity to explore new melodies, refine her technique, and deepen her emotional connection to music. She had learned that true artistry required both skill and authenticity, courage and patience, and the willingness to share one's heart with others. The hall had witnessed her growth, but her journey as a musician and as an individual was only beginning. She was ready to face the future, one note at a time, with dedication, passion, and unwavering focus. The final day arrived, and the young girl felt a mix of excitement and reflection. She had performed before large audiences, impressed the maestro, and touched the hearts of many, but today felt different. There was a sense of closure in the air, a finality that marked not just a performance, but the culmination of her journey thus far. The grand hall, now familiar, seemed to welcome her once again. Its chandeliers glimmered, casting a warm glow, and the polished wooden floor reflected the anticipation that filled the room. The audience had gathered early, buzzing with anticipation. Musicians, teachers, patrons, and those who had heard of her talent came together, curious to witness the young girl who had transformed a simple performance into an unforgettable experience. They whispered to each other, sharing stories of her previous shows, wondering what she would do today. The hall was alive with energy, yet beneath it lay a sense of calm expectation, as if everyone knew they were about to witness something extraordinary. The maestro stood near the piano, his demeanor calm and respectful. Gone was the arrogance that had characterized his initial interactions with her. Now, he observed with genuine admiration and a hint of awe. He knew that her talent had not only silenced him but had elevated the entire experience of music itself. The young girl approached the piano with quiet confidence, her posture graceful and poised. She had learned that her music spoke louder than words, and that her presence carried the strength of all her preparation and dedication. As she seated herself, she took a deep breath, recalling every lesson, every practice session, and every moment that had brought her here. The music had always been her refuge, her companion, and her expression. She pressed the first key, and the hall was instantly filled with a tone that resonated deep within the listeners. Each note was deliberate, filled with clarity and emotion, weaving a tapestry of sound that drew the audience into her world. She began with gentle, flowing melodies that conveyed a sense of calm and reflection. Her fingers moved with precision, yet each movement carried a softness that spoke to the depth of her connection with the piano. The audience listened intently, caught in the ebb and flow of the music. Even the maestro, who had once mocked her, felt a profound respect as he witnessed her skill and emotional depth. He could see that she had grown not just as a performer, but as a storyteller, capable of moving hearts with her art. As the performance progressed, the complexity of the pieces increased. She navigated intricate passages with ease, her hands moving across the keys with both strength and delicacy. Every chord, every scale, every dynamic shift was executed with care, reflecting not only technical mastery but a deep understanding of musical expression. She allowed herself moments of improvisation, letting the music flow naturally from her emotions, adding layers of richness and depth that captivated the audience. The hall seemed to breathe with her, each listener drawn into the story she was telling. The music conveyed a journey of perseverance, courage, and hope. It was more than just notes. It was a reflection of her life, her struggles, and her triumphs. The audience felt the authenticity in her performance, and their admiration grew with every passing moment. The maestro watched silently, his eyes filled with wonder and respect, realizing that he was witnessing a level of artistry that transcended his previous understanding of music. During the most challenging sections, she maintained a focused intensity, her fingers moving swiftly yet precisely over the keys. The improvisations she incorporated added a personal touch, making the performance uniquely hers. The audience was completely absorbed, their emotions aligned with the music, experiencing each note as if it were a part of their own lives. The young girl's ability to communicate through her playing had transformed the hall into a space of shared emotion and connection. As she reached the climax of her performance, the energy in the room intensified. The notes grew stronger, more expressive, and more powerful. Each phrase built upon the last, creating a crescendo that resonated with both technical brilliance and heartfelt emotion. The audience was on the edge of their seats, completely captivated. Even those who had been skeptical of her abilities before were now fully engaged, their admiration palpable. The maestro, standing nearby, felt a mix of pride and humility. He had underestimated her before, but now he could see the full extent of her talent. His previous arrogance was replaced with a deep appreciation for her dedication, skill, and the emotional honesty she brought to her performance. He realized that true artistry was not measured by status or formal training but by the connection one could make through their craft. The young girl had achieved this in a way that few ever could. The final notes approached, and she played with a deliberate intensity, ensuring that every sound conveyed the culmination of her journey. The hall was completely silent, each listener holding their breath, immersed in the beauty and power of her music. Then, as the last note faded into the air, a profound stillness settled over the room, a moment of reverence that acknowledged the magnitude of what had been witnessed. The audience erupted into applause, their excitement and admiration overwhelming. Some rose to their feet, clapping and cheering, while others had tears in their eyes, moved by the depth and beauty of her performance. The maestro joined in, clapping with a rare, sincere expression of respect. He approached her afterward, speaking quietly but with conviction. "You have a rare gift," he said. "Continue to nurture it, and you will achieve greatness beyond what you can imagine." The young girl bowed slightly, her eyes reflecting gratitude and quiet confidence. After the performance, many approached her, including musicians, teachers, and patrons. They praised her technical skill, her emotional depth, and her ability to connect with the audience. Each compliment was heartfelt and sincere, reinforcing her recognition but also inspiring her to continue growing. She listened with humility, understanding that her journey as a musician was ongoing, and that each performance offered new lessons and opportunities for development. Returning home that evening, she felt a sense of fulfillment and accomplishment. She had faced challenges, doubt, and skepticism, yet she had emerged stronger and more confident. Her talent had been recognized, not just for technical skill, but for the ability to convey emotion and connect with others. She knew that the true reward was not in the applause or recognition, but in the joy of creating and sharing music from the heart. Her mother welcomed her with a warm smile, proud of all that her daughter had achieved. They shared a quiet moment of understanding, knowing that words could not fully capture the significance of the day. The young girl felt gratitude for her mother's support and guidance, which had given her the courage to face the stage and perform with authenticity. In the days that followed, her story spread even further. People spoke of the Maid's daughter who had captivated audiences and silenced a maestro with her extraordinary talent. Her performances were celebrated not only for their technical excellence but for the emotional impact and authenticity that accompanied every note. Despite the growing recognition, she remained grounded, focused on her craft, and committed to continual growth. The events of this final performance marked a turning point in her life. She had moved from the shadows of her humble beginnings into a place of respect and recognition, not through privilege, but through her talent, dedication, and courage. She understood that this was only the beginning of her journey, and that each future performance would continue to test her abilities, resilience, and emotional expression. Yet she was prepared, guided by her love for the piano and her desire to inspire others. In the quiet hours that followed, she continued to practice, exploring new pieces, refining her technique, and deepening her emotional expression. She knew that true artistry required dedication, authenticity, and the willingness to share one's heart. The hall had witnessed the culmination of her journey thus far, but the path ahead was hers to shape. With each note, she was ready to face the future, embracing the challenges and opportunities that awaited her, driven by passion, perseverance, and the unwavering belief in her own abilities. The Maid's daughter had not only conquered the stage, but had also reshaped the expectations of those around her. She had proven that talent, dedication, and courage could overcome doubt, prejudice, and limitations imposed by circumstance. Her music had touched hearts, inspired admiration, and left a lasting impression that would be remembered by all who witnessed it. As she looked forward to the future, she carried with her the lessons learned, the confidence gained, and the knowledge that her gift was powerful enough to change lives, one note at a time.